Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kumar AKSHAY. I'll be presenting my Google Summer of project on Plone CLI and Bob templates.plone in general. So, I'm a senior student pursuing electronics and telecommunication engineering in. Um, I'm actually doing my bachelor there from India, and I'll have to participate in algorithmic focused coding challenges as well as contributing to open source. So this is the basic. There were 3 evaluations, and the project guidelines were based on. In the first evaluation, I worked on improving content type in Bob templates.plone, and there were a few minor upgrades in Plone CLI as well. And in the second evaluation, I added update locale in Mr. Bob in Plone CLI, and Mr. Bob default profiles, as well as few other commands in Plone CLI. And in the third evaluation, I worked on adding view, viewlet, and portlet templates, subtemplates in Bob templates.plone. So if you don't know what is Bob templates.plone, so it actually a wrapper over Mr. Bob, which actually uses some Jinja templates to render the profiles and to render the directories for generating boiler codes for different Plone templates. So there is like two terms in Bob templates that the creator Mr. Make uses. So in general, templates are like add-ons, theme packages, and build-outs. And probably many of you already familiar with this. And there are few sub-templates, which means that it will be stack over templates. That's why they call it sub-templates. And these are different kinds of sub-templates. So the one I worked on was content type, and content type was already there at the time. So I improved its functionality, adding few features that I will talk about it, and portlets, view and viewlets. So let me start with the content type first. So content type, as we all know, is like a folderish stuff that we could keep on going in a nested way in the content types. So it can, in the base class of content type, dextry content type, we can have like two classes. Like one can have items and in container. So if you see in the, when you run Plone CLI add content type, you could actually see several questions popping up. And so the first question is content type name. So you can have white spaces and alphabets. And the next question is content type description, which is very obvious. You could write anything. And then you could choose whether using a XML model, that is using plone.supermodel, or if you choose no, then you have to use like job.schema model. And then the next is dextry base class. So the one that I talked about, either you could choose container or item. So in container, you could actually go on using several nested way. Like you can have a parent container and as a child containers. And so the child container can actually have a binded parent container content type, or it can be also globally addable. So in item, it's just an item. So the next question is content type globally addable. So if you suppose you are choosing different types of, a configuration in which you have a parent content type container, and then you have a child content type, and if you go on deeper also you could. So for that, the parent content type, you have to select globally addable true. That means y or 1 or any number. And for the child container type, you could uh, you have to choose globally addable to false, and then it will actually ask you the parent container name. So the next question is, if you want to filter content types, you can choose either yes or no. And if you want the class's name here as well, so that will generate a class for content types. And if you want to activate default behaviors to the content types. So so in this content type subtemplates, I actually worked on improving it, like generating the prerequisite codes, I mean the basic boiler codes, which were necessary for this, and which can support several configuration based on your questions, based on the answer of your questions. And if you are choosing the container type to be I mean the content type base classes to be item, then it should not ask filter options. And we also worked on improving test coverage for all these configuration conditionally configurations. And this also has some test in the robot test also, which are generated on its own. And yeah, so the view subtemplate is actually just a browser view, and it basically asks like 3 or 4 questions. So you can see the overall workflow here. So the Clonezilla add view triggers the set of questions that you need to ask, you need to answer for generating the view subtemplates. So the first question is, do you want a Python class or not? So view can have Python class, and it can also just have a template file or combination of these two. But view must have any one of these to actually work. So if you choose yes, then you need to give Python class name in camel casing. And this is the view name that you actually want on the URL part. So it can have like underscore or dashes. And in case you want to a template also, then you can state that. And that's pretty well everything in the view template. And if you visit on the localhost, you could see in the demo view, this is the URL that you gave, and this is the default message you could see after installing the package. And this is the viewlet subtemplate. In this is actually pretty similar to view, and the question were also very obvious and the same as view. You are asking whether you need Python class or not, and what is the viewlet name, and if you need an template file or not. And so for viewlet, it will use a predefined viewlet manager just above the content title. So you could see here the default message after you activate the package. So for portlets, so portlets has a wide variety of different portlets we could use. So in this one, it just weather portlets inside it. So in this, it actually asks you 2 things. If in the question it just asks you the name of the what you want to give to the portlet, and it will generate a form, and inside the form you have just one text field in which you have to enter the place, the city place, and the country code. And After that, it's actually using Yahoo API to fetch the data for weathers, and it will show you on the left side of the. You could configure on the right side as well and at the bottom too. So Plone CLI is a wrapper over bobtemplates.plone. You could actually just use bobtemplates.plone as well, but the codes, I mean the commands for using it are a bit messy, and it's hard to remember those commands. So Plone CLI makes it easy to actually have a command line, and you can just type like 3 or 4 words and you can create everything. So this is a normal walkthrough of Plone CLI. Like first we have to type Plone CLI, create, and the add-on, the template name, either add-on, build-out, or theme package. And yeah. And then the package name. So in this case, it's collective.todo. And after that, you get to ask about author name and the author email. So it will fetch the data from your Git config by default. And next thing is your GitHub username. And if you have description about the add-on. And it will ask if you want to initialize Git. If you're using some other version control, you could type no. Or if you're using Git, then it will initialize it. And the version name. So it usually, by default, it will set to 5.1. And it will ask you about whether do you want to activate Git auto commit or not. And it will commit every changes in the project. And this is the normal walkthrough of Plone CLI. But you can also have by default several settings on Plone CLI config using Plone CLI config, and you can actually save these predefined answer for this, so that it doesn't ask every time. So when you write like Plone CLI config, then it will ask you everything, just that you answer your author name, email, GitHub username, and the Plone version. And there is actually a question, do you want to disable Git in case you are using some other version control? And do you want always initialize Git repo in case you are totally working on Git? And the last question is, do you want to enable auto commit? Without asking every time. So this is also very handy in case you don't want to bother about anything else. And it will generate a It will actually generate a Mr. Bob config in your home directory. And every time before asking those questions, it will fetch the result, and it won't ask any question which is already been answered in this profile. So in case you're doing this once again, then it will just ask. Yeah, it will just ask the description of the add-on name, that's all. So for initialization, we developed a update locale command in the Plone CLI. So it's very handy, and you don't have to bother about installing anything else except get text. And you could actually update the locale as well as sync it with every commands. The workflow is pretty easy. You just need to make a directory for the language that you're translating in. So in case we are in the root directory of our Plone package, then we need to go inside locale directory. And right here you could see there's a update.py which is actually being used in the our virtual environment for generating scripts, so that it could be actually used in Windows, Linux, and Mac OS as well without any issue. Otherwise, the previous version was using update.sh, which would not work in Windows. So here you just need to create a directory. For example, in Germany we write G, and for Indians it's HI. And here I have already activated my virtual environment, so I just need to run the update locale command. Otherwise, you have to, use it like bin/update command, update locale, and then it will just ask your email address, and the syncing process will work. So it will create .po files, and you could easily get .mo files from this by running build-outs. And okay, yeah. And if you go inside LCMS, you could see .po files there, and all the text extracted inside it using tags. So there were also a few minor improvements in Clonezilla, like you could see the Clonezilla version name in as well as Bob templates using Clonezilla -V, and Clonezilla test, different tests just like that we use in Plone. And there are a few other improvements, like few unit test increasement, test coverage increase in Clonezilla as well as Bob templates.clones. And you could see all this detail on the wiki page of Clonezilla. So this was my first GSoC experience, and it was really fun. Of course, there was huge learning curve at the beginning, since I was a Django developer back then, and transforming from Django to a Plone was really a good learning curve. And of course, the constant mentor support from my mentors, it would have been not possible without them. And of course, the community. So it's my first open source community, and I get to see very friendly people, always eager to help us and work out with our stupid questions as well. So I don't know what happened here, but he's like sitting there, Make, and he was the creator of Bob templates.plone as well as Clonezilla, and the two other mentors were Kolb and Alexander. Oh, yeah, it's right here. So there is another talk on 9th November about the present and future scope of Clonezilla. So you could see everything else about the Clonezilla there. And this is the project's links. So it's on the Clonezilla and bobtemplates.plone on the GitHub. That's it. Thank you. Any questions? Yeah.
So the plonecli is a wrapper to the Mr. Bob, right? But the script running and the message shows Mr. Bob still there. Do you? I think that confuses. Do you want to update the message.
Okay, so first part is like Mr. Bob is a different packages for installing using it uses Jinja template to render and using .ini files for asking questions. So Mr. Bob template is a totally standalone package. So Bob templates.one actually uses this one to ask questions related to Plone packages, templates, rendering stuff for configuration of each different sub-templates and templates. And Plone CLI is just like above the wrapper of this whole thing. So it's for accessibility access so that you don't have to remember every big commands for creating a package. So if you see in the Bob templates, it's like 4 or 5 words combining and then you actually generate a package. And the question would be same if you just use Bob templates.plone. And if you use just Plone CLI, then the question is of course same, but you just have to type less for this Plone CLI. Does that answer your questions? Okay. Anything else?
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.